Hey guys, welcome to motolap. I'm Tom, and today we're diving deep into something every rider experiences at some point, but not everyone talks about openly: fear. And specifically, one, the fear of dropping your motorcycle, two, the fear of high speed riding, three, the fear of cornering and leaning too far, four, the fear of riding in traffic, and five, the fear of mechanical failure while you're out on the road. And I want to break these down in a real, honest, practical way so that whether you're a brand new rider, staring at your first bike in the driveway, or you've been riding for years but still feel that little knot in your stomach sometimes, you'll understand why these fears are common, why they're usually exaggerated in our minds, and how to manage them so they don't control your riding experience. Because fear itself isn't the enemy. Misunderstood fear is. And when you understand what's happening physically, mentally, and mechanically, you transform fear into awareness and awareness into skill. So let's start with one: the fear of dropping your motorcycle, which is probably the very first anxiety most riders ever have, especially when the bike feels heavy, tall, expensive, and unforgiving, and you're worried about embarrassing yourself at a stoplight or scratching something you worked hard to afford. But here's the reality: almost every rider drops a motorcycle at some point, often at very low speeds or even at a standstill. And it usually happens because of small things like uneven pavement, gravel under your foot, turning the bars too sharply while braking, or simply misjudging balance when backing up. And what makes this fear so powerful is not the physical consequence, but the emotional one. Nobody wants to look inexperienced. But the truth is, motorcycles are designed to handle minor tip overs far better than we imagine. And more importantly, balance at low speed is a skill that improves dramatically with practice: clutch control, rear brake modulation, and body positioning. So instead of fearing the drop, focus on mastering friction zone control, keeping your head up, and practicing tight turns in a parking lot until the bike feels like an extension of you rather than a separate heavy object. Because once you build that muscle memory, the fear shrinks naturally. And even if you do drop it, you learn how to lift it properly. You brush it off and you keep riding. And that experience actually builds confidence instead of destroying it. Moving on to two, the fear of high speed riding. This one tends to creep in the first time you merge onto a highway and feel the wind pushing against your chest and helmet while the engine hums at higher RPMs, and your brain suddenly becomes hyper aware of vulnerability. Because unlike a car, there's no metal cage around you, and that exposure can feel intense. But here's the important perspective: modern motorcycles are engineered to be remarkably stable at highway speeds, often more stable than at crawling pace, thanks to gyroscopic forces in the wheels and steering geometry that naturally keep the bike upright. And that wobble you fear rarely happens unless something is mechanically wrong or you're gripping the bars too tightly. And that's another key point. Fear often makes riders tense up, and tension actually creates instability. So, one of the most powerful ways to overcome high speed anxiety is to relax your arms, grip the tank with your knees, and let the bike move slightly beneath you instead of fighting it, because wind buffeting and road imperfections are normal. And once you experience them repeatedly in controlled situations, your brain recalibrates and realizes that what felt dangerous was actually just unfamiliar. And familiarity breeds calm, and calm improves reaction time and judgment. And that cycle reinforces itself positively. Now let's talk about three: the fear of leaning too far in corners, which is one of the most persistent fears riders carry, especially after watching dramatic crash videos online or hearing stories from others. And the image of the bike sliding out from under you can become vivid. But what many riders don't realize is that motorcycles are capable of leaning far more than most street riders will ever require. And modern tires provide incredible grip when properly inflated and warmed. And most low side crashes on the street happen because of sudden inputs, like grabbing the front brake mid corner, or because of road hazards like oil, gravel, or wet paint. Not because the rider leaned too much in a smooth, controlled turn. And understanding countersteering, throttle control, and vision, especially the principle of looking through the turn where you want to go, dramatically reduces this fear. Because when you trust the physics, you stop fighting the lean and instead cooperate with it. And one of the biggest breakthroughs riders have is realizing that the bike actually wants to stay upright and track through a curve when inputs are smooth and consistent. And that panic straightens the bike more often than lean causes it to fall. So, practicing gradual lean angles in safe environments, increasing speed progressively, and learning how traction works under acceleration and deceleration builds a rational confidence that replaces irrational fear. Next is 4, the fear of riding in traffic. And this one is understandable because traffic introduces unpredictability. Cars changing lanes without signaling, drivers distracted by phones, sudden braking, blind spots everywhere. And it can feel like you're invisible. And while it's true that riding demands heightened awareness, it's also true that you have more maneuverability than most vehicles around you. And defensive riding techniques make a huge difference, such as positioning yourself where drivers can see you in mirrors, avoiding lingering in blind spots, maintaining escape routes, and reading traffic patterns ahead rather than just reacting to the car directly in front of you. And one mental shift that helps tremendously is moving from "I hope they see me" to "I will assume they don't see me and plan accordingly." Because that mindset keeps you proactive rather than reactive. And fear in traffic often decreases significantly after riders accumulate miles and start recognizing patterns, like how certain vehicles telegraph lane changes or how brake lights ripple backward in congestion. So the key is not eliminating traffic fear entirely, but converting it into situational awareness, because that heightened awareness becomes one of your greatest strengths as a motorcyclist. Finally, 5, the fear of mechanical failure on the road, which can range from worrying about a tire blowout at speed to imagining the engine seizing in the middle of nowhere. And while mechanical issues can happen, modern motorcycles are extremely reliable when maintained properly. And most catastrophic failures are preceded by warning signs like unusual noises, vibrations, warning lights, or neglected service intervals, and regular maintenance, checking tire pressure, chain tension, oil levels, brake pad wear, dramatically reduces the likelihood of unexpected breakdowns. And even in the rare event something does go wrong, most issues, like a flat tire or dead battery, are manageable with preparation, roadside assistance, or a phone call. And understanding how your motorcycle works at a basic level not only reduces fear, but increases your connection to the machine. Because mystery breeds anxiety, while knowledge breeds control. And the more you learn about your bike's systems, braking, suspension, drivetrain, the less you imagine worst case scenarios and the more you trust the engineering beneath you. And beyond these 5 major fears, it's important to recognize that fear often spikes during transitions. Your first ride after winter, your first long trip, your first ride in rain. And those moments are not signs that you shouldn't ride, but signs that your brain is recalibrating to new conditions. And gradual exposure is the most effective method for shrinking fear, because every successful ride without incident rewires your perception of risk. And over time, you start to differentiate between healthy caution and paralyzing anxiety. And that distinction is crucial because healthy caution keeps you scanning mirrors, adjusting speed for conditions, and respecting your limits, while paralyzing anxiety freezes your decision making and drains enjoyment from the experience. And riding is supposed to be enjoyable, freeing, almost meditative at times. And when fear dominates, it robs you of that connection to the road, the environment, and the machine. So the goal is not to become fearless, but to become informed and prepared, because informed riders make smoother inputs, anticipate hazards earlier, and recover from mistakes more effectively. And preparation includes proper gear as well, wearing a quality helmet, gloves, jacket, pants, and boots. Not only protects you physically, but also reduces mental stress because you know you've minimized risk as much as reasonably possible. And that peace of mind matters more than many riders admit. And another powerful fear reducer is training, advanced riding courses, track days, skill clinics, because structured environments allow you to explore braking limits, cornering techniques, and emergency maneuvers in controlled settings. And once you've practiced hard braking intentionally, it feels far less terrifying if you ever need it unexpectedly on the street. And similarly, learning how to swerve effectively transforms a hypothetical nightmare scenario into a rehearsed skill. and rehearsed skills rarely feel as frightening as unknown possibilities. And community also plays a role because riding with experienced, responsible riders exposes you to calm, confident behavior that you subconsciously mirror. And seeing others handle situations smoothly reinforces the idea that these fears are manageable. And storytelling can help too. Because when veteran riders openly share their early anxieties and minor mistakes, it normalizes your own concerns and removes the illusion that confident riders were born without fear. And over time, as you accumulate miles, seasons, weather conditions, road types, and experiences, your relationship with fear evolves from something sharp and intrusive to something subtle and guiding, almost like a quiet advisor rather than a loud alarm. And that evolution is part of becoming a mature rider. And maturity on a motorcycle doesn't mean riding faster or taking more risks. It means understanding when to push your comfort zone slightly and when to back off, when to ride aggressively and when to cruise, when to continue and when to turn around, because conditions aren't ideal. And that discernment only develops through experience combined with reflection. And reflection is key. After each ride, think briefly about what felt uncomfortable and why, and ask whether it was a skill gap, a knowledge gap, or simply unfamiliarity. Because once you identify the category, you can address it directly instead of letting it linger as vague anxiety. And vague anxiety is always more powerful than specific defined challenges. And when challenges are defined, they can be practiced. And when they're practiced, they become strengths. And that's how fears that once seemed huge gradually shrink into manageable considerations. And remember, too, that motorcycles amplify sensations: the sound, the wind, the acceleration. And sometimes what we interpret as danger is simply intensity. And learning to distinguish intensity from actual risk is a huge milestone in riding, because intensity can be thrilling and enjoyable when understood. And fear often fades when we reinterpret intense sensations as part of the experience rather than signals of impending disaster. And ultimately, riding a motorcycle will always involve some level of risk, but so does driving a car, playing sports, or even walking down a busy street. And the key difference is that motorcycling demands engagement. And that engagement, while initially intimidating, becomes deeply rewarding once fear is balanced with skill and awareness. And if you're currently dealing with any of these five fears, know that you're not alone. You're not weak, and you're not unsuited to ride. You're simply in the process of growth. And growth on two wheels is one of the most satisfying journeys you can take. Because every small victory, every smooth corner, every confident merge, every controlled stop builds a foundation that supports bigger adventures later. And one day, you'll look back and realize that the things that once kept you awake the night before a ride barely cross your mind anymore. And that transformation happens gradually, mile by mile. And that's the beauty of motorcycling. It teaches patience, focus, humility, and resilience. And those lessons extend far beyond the road. So don't let fear convince you to quit before you've given yourself the chance to develop, respect it, learn from it, train through it, but don't surrender to it. Because on the other side of those five common fears is a level of freedom and confidence that's hard to describe until you've experienced it yourself. And that's why we talk about these things openly here, because honesty builds stronger riders, and stronger riders build a safer riding community. So if this helped you rethink any of your worries, make sure you like and subscribe, and safe ride, long life.